Welcome back to Face the Facts. I am Nick Face, and joined alongside me this evening is once again Kevin Vent.
Hello, Nick. Good to see you tonight.
Boy, have we had some interesting things happen in sports recently.
It's been a fascinating couple of weeks.
As a matter of fact, it's been a fascinating day with a couple things going on.
Sure.
So, in case some of us don't know about our show, we are going on our 7th episode now here in the North Reading community, and we are going on, like we said, 8 years of Face the Facts for you to enjoy, and we appreciate it. We also wanted to let you know that you can watch these episodes on YouTube. I've looked at the view counts, and I am blown away with how people have been responding and liking it and stuff like that. And you can watch them from the NORCAM YouTube channel, and we appreciate anything that you'd like to offer. And keep on watching. So we're going to get into the
Especially if you disagree with Nick. Absolutely comment on that.
I like people to disagree
Absolutely.
with. You like to be challenged on certain things you do. And that's what makes it exciting. Now, with the Red Sox, we're going to start it off with them tonight. And it is November.
Little hot stove. We need a little hot stove.
The stove is red hot right now. It is cooking. Something good is in the oven, as they like to say. A couple things are in the oven, and I think I want to lead it off with Lester. Okay,
absolutely. Yeah, it looks like the Red Sox have tendered a contract to John Lester.
Yep.
And according to all sources that we hear from, it's a quote-unquote aggressive contract. We don't know exactly what that means. There's been some talk of 5 years, 125, something like that.
Yep.
To me, the Red Sox need to have a frontline starting pitcher.
Yep.
Whether it's Lester, Cole Hamels, someone else, they've got to have someone like that. And I like the idea of Lester. I don't know about you.
Is he that number one ace they're looking for?
I think he is.
Yeah.
I think he's proven that when he went to both here in Boston, last season in 2013 with the World Series team, he proved that. I think he proved it in the postseason last year, in the postseason this year. I think he proved it with Oakland. He didn't have the wins with Oakland, but that wasn't his fault. I mean, his ERA was sub-2 with Oakland. So
I always look at Oakland as the Red Sox cast-off team.
Yeah, right.
Okay, it's the team where they go, if the Red Sox don't want them, the Athletics take them on the island of misfit toys, basically. So all those players, not saying Lester's a misfit,
no.
But Lester was there to help them get to a World Series. They hadn't been there under the Billy Beane era ever.
Yeah, and I think the A's made a mistake in that. Not that they made a mistake in Lester, who's a good player, but they gave away all the thump in their lineup in Cespedes.
As soon as Cespedes came to the Red Sox, they couldn't score.
Yeah,
and that lineup just went completely downhill.
Yeah, so I mean, Cespedes was a force in the middle of that lineup, and as soon as Oakland got rid of him, they couldn't score runs anymore, and that was their problem. That's why they didn't get any farther than they did, despite having a lot of quality players at a lot of positions.
So with the Lester news, there are a lot of quality sources that are out there that can back up the story that the contract looks like it's aggressive. Gordon Needs of ESPN Boston is, I think, a very good
credible source
for credibility. Same with
used to work for the Globe, right?
He did. Yep. And Sean McAdam, CSNNE. He's the Red Sox reporter for them. He's a very solid source. And he likes to keep things kind of hush, if you haven't noticed.
And these aren't guys who are going to speculate.
No, they're not.
These are guys who are going to get inside information and share it. So.
Another great source that I have to also mention, and this is Peter Gammons.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Now, he's been wrong a couple times. He's getting older, and sometimes you lose your sharpness as that goes on.
I tell you with Peter Gammons, though, this doesn't have much to do with the Red Sox. No one knows the minor league players better than Peter Gammons.
Yeah. I think the one guy that does.
Across the league.
The one guy that can challenge him, the up-and-coming, is Alex Spear. Yeah. And he's from WEI. Yeah. He really kind of knows the farm a little bit.
That's on the Red Sox farm. I'm talking Gammons across the league.
Across the league is Gammons.
Across the league. No one knows the minors better than Peter Gammons.
Absolutely. Now, he also came out and said that the Red Sox are absolutely the front runners to landing John Lester. And Peter Gammons and Theo Epstein jam a little bit in that hut stove music group that they have. So there is a lot of back and forth between those two. They're pretty close.
A lot of talk about Lester potentially going to the Cubs. Yeah.
For that report coming out by Gammons and something like that, I feel good about the chances that Lester returns home.
There was also a report today that St. Louis is interested in Lester.
Yes.
Which would be trying to put together the Lester Lackey thing again, I think is what they're,
I'm not surprised to hear about that. I'm not surprised to hear about Atlanta, because Atlanta, I guess they have a house down there. Him and his Lester and the wife have a house down there in the family. and I believe Lester's wife originally grew up in Atlanta.
Sure. Not to read anything into it, but they had their house in Boston on the market.
Yep.
They took it off the market.
Yes, I was going to put that out there too. Now, a couple of our younger kids in our sports zone classes that we did were confused about that.
Okay.
When you take the house off the market, people think it's sold.
Right.
But that's not the case here.
Right.
They pulled it off the market, meaning John Lester and his wife, the family, still own that house.
Seriously considering coming back. If they weren't seriously considering coming back to Boston, they'd leave it on the market.
The house would still be there.
Yeah, they'd be
So-
trying to sell it. So,
yeah.
so it doesn't mean he's coming, but at least it means they're seriously considering it.
That's true. Now, a couple people may think, oh, you're full of it. Lester's not coming back. The Red Sox didn't want him originally. They wouldn't give him the money and pony up at the beginning of the season last year. Well, I think this is a negotiation ploy here a little bit. And I think that Lester didn't want to have to deal with monies and dollars and, figuring out everything during the season. I think that the Red Sox kept asking him what he wanted. There was a report that said that they originally come out, I believe it was 5 years, $70 million. Something like that. And everybody said that's the low ball offer.
It was a low ball offer, yeah.
I think that was a starting point. I don't think it was there to hurt anybody's feelings. I think it was there to feel it out, see what he was thinking a little bit. He didn't want the focus on himself at all. And I think that says a lot about his character and the way that he's gone about his major league career.
I think also that a lot of people have pointed to the Red Sox and say if they bring Lester back, it's admitting a mistake that they shouldn't have traded him in the first place. And I totally disagree.
Yeah.
Red Sox weren't going anywhere last year. Everyone knew that. They traded Lester. They got back Cespedes in return, a quality player. And if they turn around and re-sign Lester, they essentially got Cespedes for nothing.
For Gomes.
For free.
For
Gomes, for Brian
really
Gomes,
for
yeah.
There's
that's what I mean, for nothing.
I really do think that there was some kind of behind-the-scenes story that we don't know.
Yeah, it would be interesting to find out.
It would be interesting to find out. I don't think we'll ever find that answer
it's against the rules to trade him away.
It is.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're just going to re-sign later on. However, it doesn't mean if that happens, it doesn't mean there was some kind of collusion.
I have to tell you, the most fascinating thing about that deadline, and July 31st, we'll go down 2014 as the John Lester trade.
The John Lester trade, yeah.
There was so much of a story to tell about that day and what's happened with Lester around, these past 6 months that can really back up the belief that there was something going on.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things you're never going to know, or maybe you'll know
really
in 10 or 15 years when Lester's career is over, maybe, you might hear something about that, but I don't think we're going to hear anything about that before then.
No. And another thing that I look at from Lester that I think really points the arrow towards, him coming back with everything is his familiarity, if that's the way how you say it. There's the word right there, with the team. He wants an environment where he feels comfortable in.
Yeah.
And being outside of a market, the Cubs, they may have an up-and-coming great team, but it's going to be a new environment, new change. He wants comfort.
And I don't think it's wrong to point out, how much Lester went through in Boston with the Red Sox, with his cancer and all of that. And that's part of feeling comfortable is knowing that the team had his back during that time period.
Sure.
And so not that he would necessarily reward them for that, but certainly it's got to make him feel good that when that happened, there was no hemming and hawing. They didn't drop him. They really let him take his time to get back, and of course they benefited from that with 2 World Series that he helped them win. So it's been a very good reciprocal relationship between Lester and the Red Sox, and I don't think there were any hard feelings when they traded him.
No, I don't think there was either. And I think another thing, like we said with the Island of Misfit Toys with the Oakland A's, it's got former Red Sox players on it. I mean, if you're going to be traded to something,
lots of guys, a lot of familiar faces.
And he went with our Johnny Gomes boy right there. So I mean. There's a kind of a give and take on what he really wanted to do with things there. So what's your probability on him coming back? What's your percentage at?
75.
75?
Yeah.
That low?
That low, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Because we might talk about familiarity, we might talk about good feelings, we might talk about, hey, he likes the Red Sox because the organization came out with, yada, 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 yada. And we talk about this all the time. How many times does a guy end up not taking the most money? It does happen.
We said it with
does
Ellsbury
happen.
last time.
It does
last
happen.
Year.
Joe Mauer went for less money to stay in Minnesota.
Derek
Actually,
Jeter.
a lot of guys in Minnesota do that.
Yeah.
Because
Derek Jeter did do it with the
day.
Yankees, I remember.
Yeah, Jeter did it. I mean, it happens on occasion, but 90% of the time, 95% of the time, they go with the most money.
Who's the last Red Sox player to take the discount?
Pedroia. No?
I would even, well, I don't even, you think Pedroia is a discount right now?
I think in comparison to the other second baseman in his class, I mean, look at what Cano got.
Yeah,
look
I
at
can
what,
see that.
Look at what Kinsler's getting.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and you know, he's in that same class. He didn't have as good a season last year. He was injured. But, I mean, he's in that same group, and he makes significantly less than both.
I was going to put Jason Varitek on the list.
Jason Varitek.
Or Mike Lowell.
Yep.
You know, those are two great examples of taking lesser
Sure.
to be familiar with your environment by being happy
Varitek
and
definitely
things.
did.
Yep.
Though that wasn't a major contract to begin with, but
No.
he definitely took less than he could have gotten on the open market.
I think
that's
Varitek was like a 4-year, $9 million, something like that.
I think it was $10 million a year.
And then he got to be captain or whatever it was back
there was
then.
some of that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I think they probably, promised him a role in the organization after his retirement in that whole deal. I mean, I think there was more going on there with that. But, I mean, Nomar initially, quote unquote, took a hometown discount. What he took was the years and the security of the years for lesser dollars up front.
True.
Though he didn't take the deal he should have taken, which was 4 years at 15, he never came close to making $60 million.
Never.
After that, but so it does happen.
It does
happen, but it's pretty rare.
It is pretty rare.
It's pretty
Could
rare.
we be seeing history before Christmas?
I think
still thinking 75 cents?
I think there's a chance it could happen before Thanksgiving.
Really?
There's a chance.
Okay.
There's a chance. I mean, it's really, how much does that familiarity and comfort factor fit in, or does he really want to find out what St. Louis, Chicago, et cetera?
Well, I think what he's doing right now is figuring out what he's worth.
Yeah.
I think he wants to figure out which team is going to want me the most.
Yeah, I think he knows he's worth.
But I don't think that I believe when he speaks. I believe when he speaks to the media and he says that he's not going to go with the highest bidder and things like that. He wants the place where he feels is best suited for him.
So let me ask you this. If he comes back and says, instead of 5,125, if that's the real number, if he comes back and says 6,150, do you think the Red Sox do it?
No. No. I think they'll go 6 years, 135, and I think that's going to be their max.
Okay.
And I think some people will say the Red Sox are being cheap on that. And I'll have to agree on that too. Yeah. I think when you need such an overhaul of a team right now.
Particularly the pitching staff.
Particularly.
I mean, there's no number one pitcher right now. There's really no number two right now.
No.
Buchholz has shown flashes of that.
If you go into next season with Buchholz as a 2 or a 3, you're in deep trouble.
I think Buchholz is a solid 3.
You think already is 3?
Solid 3. I think Buchholz is a solid 3. I think Joe Kelly is a solid 4.
Yep.
And then whoever is a 5, there are 4 or 5 guys that could fill that role.
Yep.
But if you go into next season with Buchholz as your 2, this is not a World Series team and possibly not a playoff team.
Yep.
That's my opinion.
I would have to agree on that as well. I would have to agree on that. Definitely pitching is number one that they need to take care of. But another issue that they have to take care of is third base.
Third base.
Now,
are you not a Will Middlebrooks believer?
A who?
Remember that guy? He's dating Jenny Dell.
Oh, I remember Jenny Dell.
Jenny Dell's boyfriend.
We have to talk about the third base issue. I mean, how many people did they put at that position last year?
Lots of people.
Including Bogarts.
Yeah, Bogarts was there. Brock Holt was there. The unknown Will Middlebrooks was there. That's just 3 I can think of off the top of my head. There may have been a couple of other guys that played there.
I would think Sashini.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
He played there in a little bit.
Especially in September, he came up.
The list can go on.
Well, so there's at least 4.
The main objective here that we're looking at is
a steady third baseman.
A steady third baseman. And you can make the argument that Brock Holt was fairly decent over at third base, but he's not a third baseman.
And look at Brock Holt's numbers. When he first burst on the scene and was doing great, the legend of Brock Holt and all this kind of thing. But look at him in the second half, especially, August, September.
It just went down. I mean, he was 330 hitter.
Yeah, he fell on. I think he
281.
He came way back to earth.
Yeah.
Particularly after the All-Star break.
Yep.
I think he came way back to earth, and I don't think you can count on Brock Holt. This is my opinion.
I don't either.
As a starter. I think he's a nice fill-in guy.
He's a super utility guy.
Yeah, I think he's a nice guy to have. If there's an injury, you need someone to play for 2 weeks. but I'm not going to count on Brock Holt as a starter.
And I think some fans, when you think about that third base situation we had last year, Brock Holt was your center fielder.
Yeah.
On a good amount of the season.
Yeah.
Jackie Bradley was there as well.
Well, Jackie Bradley was there a long time. They gave Jackie Bradley.
But as soon as he just started to not be able to hit, it went to Holt.
Right.
And then that's when Bogarts moved to third, and Stephen Drew came into shortstop.
Yeah.
That just never worked.
Yeah, I think you're going to see Bogarts at short this year. Stephen Drew was never anything worth mentioning last season.
No, I'm surprised we're mentioning him now.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a crazy situation with Stephen Drew last year. But
so speaking of third base, there's one
big
man, big panda bear
Big
that's
panda.
on the free agent market.
The Kung Fu Panda.
Just coming off another World Series champion. He has 3.
Yep.
And that's Pablo Sandoval.
Yep. He was in Boston.
Got wined and dined on Monday night.
Wined and dined. Had dinner with David Ortiz and talked with Ben Charrington. Probably chatted with the ownership a little bit over there. Really kind of trying to win him over. He's a good player.
He's a good player.
Proven postseason monster.
Yep.
I have questions about his physicality, his weight and his size and that kind of thing.
Yep.
But if you're thinking of him as a third baseman for 2 or 3 years and then as a DH to take David Ortiz's place, I could see that. I could buy into that. I don't think he's going to be a third baseman in 6 years. I think wherever he ends up, he's going to be a DH.
There's a pros and cons list here. There's a pros and cons. What can he do in the short term? What can he do in the long term?
Yep.
And I think what they're looking at here is trying to justify giving him a big contract.
Yeah, and I think I really do see. I mean, how many more years does Ortiz have? 2 at the most, 2 or 3 at the top, I'd say.
I would say max.
So if you're looking at a guy who potentially could take Ortiz's place as the DH, I don't have a problem with a longer term deal. If you're thinking about him playing third base for 6 years, forget it. It's not going to happen. No, maybe you move him to first in a couple of years. He could probably play first a little bit. For maybe a couple of years at third, couple of years at first, DH a couple of years or something like that. But my issue with the Kung Fu Panda, Pablo Sandoval, is this. If they spend the money on him and then don't have the money for another pitcher, let's assume for the moment that they get a Lester or a Cole Hamels or one of those guys, one of those top tier pitchers that are available. Let's assume they get one of them. I don't know which one, but let's assume they get one of them. You want Lester, and I want Lester too. That's the one I want. Let's assume they get one.
Let's assume.
All right. They only have so much money. John Henry doesn't want to sell his boat, so they only have so much money in the bank account. It's a very nice boat.
It is.
If they spend the money on Sandoval and don't get a number 2 pitcher, to me, it's a waste of money.
It is.
If they spend the money on Sandoval and trade for a number 2 pitcher, or still have money in the vault for a number 2 pitcher, then I think it's a good move. But if it prevents them from getting a number 2 pitcher, I don't like it. I'd rather go with Will Middlebrooks at third for a whole season, assuming he can stay healthy, which is a big assumption, and at hitting 216 and maybe a little pop every now and then, but have 2 top of the line pitchers. I'd rather have that.
Okay. I do think that they're going to have 2 top-of-the-line pitchers. I think one will be acquired by free agent, which I think is Lester. I do think they'll be able to trade something to get another quality number 2 pitcher that's in there. And I do think Pablo Sandoval is going to be coming to town.
Okay.
I think that David Ortiz and the Red Sox organization won him over Monday night. And, even throughout the season or anything like that. I think he's had his eyes on the Red Sox for a while. I think the Red Sox really want a third baseman that's not just a left-handed hitter, but he's a switch-hitting third baseman. And I think that what they feel is that he will fit well into their dimensions in the ballpark. They feel like he's going to use the wall effectively and be able to really produce better numbers than he has done with the Giants.
And defensively, he's solid.
He is
third
solid.
Base.
Yep.
Despite everything, when you look at him, he doesn't look like a third baseman, but
he looks like a first baseman.
He looks
DH.
like a first baseman DH, but he plays third base well. You can only base. At the end of the day, you can only look at the evidence that's available in front of you, and you have to look at the way he's played third base over the last 5-6 years, and he's played a very solid third base. So my concern is his range.
Yep.
And when you put that together with the lack of range for Bogarts,
makes for a very tricky left side of the infield.
A very tricky left side of the infield.
Yeah.
You know, with you know, if your number one pitcher is John Lester, who's a lefty, pitching to those righties, that left side of the infield becomes
it's a
important.
hot corner. You got to get the job done.
But you know, it's not as though we haven't been successful with some questionable fielding over there before. So,
well, we haven't exchanged dollar signs here in years and all that. And according to a report that was said before this show began, whenever the heck that may be, who knows? This could be 4 years from now. The dollar signs were 5 years, $80 million. To me, I do that.
okay, I
think over 100, no.
I wouldn't do over 100, and I wouldn't do more than 5.
Yep. I think I'm maxing out on what I.
You know,
on
maybe
that amount.
5 with an option for a 6th.
Okay.
Might be a negotiating point for him.
That might be the winning over.
That might be the thing that
winning
wins,
ticket,
wins him over. You know,
Yeah.
580 with an option for the 6th year at another 20 or something like that.
Yep.
Or you know, whatever the number is.
Now, if they do not sign Panda, let's say that they just happen to come out and they strike out, you know, swing and miss, and he goes back to the Giants, which is possible.
Which is absolutely
It is
possible.
absolutely possible.
I mean, the guy has won championships there, and he's got a lot of good feelings, and you know, you see how the crowd goes crazy for him. And they love
My
him there in
next
San Francisco.
question that I was going to ask about the Red Sox, everything going on here, is who else should the Red Sox target? Let's say, you know, Sandoval's deal falls through. Mm-hmm. Where do you go next?
At third base?
Yep.
I don't know. I don't think they're.
I can come up with one, but I think it's
one.
going to be tough to get him away from the Yankees, and that's Chase Headley. He was there with the he used to be on the Padres.
Yeah,
he was
I don't
a
see-
good guy,
there's
but
no-
his numbers have gone down
There's
dramatically.
virtually no chance that the Red Sox and the Yankees make a trade.
No, he's a free
Oh,
agent.
is he a free agent?
He's a free
Okay.
agent.
Is he a free agent?
So
Okay.
he's probably number 2 on the
Yeah,
pecking
he doesn't
order
make
here.
the splash that Sandoval
No.
does. You know, again, he's a fairly solid third baseman. His numbers
Yep.
were a little low, but I think you can live with no lower numbers.
Yep.
You know, if you have, we went into the year 2013. I don't know if you remember this, but when we did our preseason show for 2013 for the Red Sox, I called it the year of if. If this happens, if that happens, if this happens, if that happens, if that happens. It just so happened 2013. Every single one of my ifs happened, and they won the World Series.
The if year.
So I'm saying next year is an if year also.
Okay.
If Pedroia can come back after his surgery to the Pedroia he was 2 or 3 years ago, then you have a decent looking lineup in the middle there with Pedroia, Ortiz, Cespedes, Napoli after his surgery coming back. You know, do you need more? You always want more offensive pop, but do you need huge numbers out of third base? Not necessarily.
Yeah. Especially when you have a shortstop up and coming who looks like he can swing the bat pretty well.
Yeah.
Or when you have, you know, a guy like Rusty Castillo, who
Yeah,
they went out
and
got,
he's
who
another
people
X-
don't even know
He's
anything
an X
really
factor.
about.
We really don't know what he's going to be capable
Right.
of producing. He may start the year in AAA.
You know who the biggest X factor of the whole thing is here? It's Victorino.
Victorino's a huge X factor, absolutely.
I think he was one of the single-handed players that really helped 2013 shape up to the reason it was.
Yeah, I agree.
If
And
he comes back to produce like that,
he essentially
there's-
missed the entire season last year.
He was.
He played, 7 games or something like that.
And that's what started the season to go downhill.
Yeah.
Is without him there, that took away your number 2 hitter, your
Yeah.
guy that was getting on base, or was projected to be your leadoff guy.
Right, with the loss of Ellsbury.
We haven't even thought about that right there.
Yeah, I'm not even thinking about the lineup yet. But I mean, I could see a scenario where Victorino is your leadoff hitter playing right field. You know, and then you hit second Pedroia, third Ortiz, 4 Cespedes, 5 Napoli.
But wait, you just mentioned Victorino is leading off in right field.
Right.
Okay, Cespedes, are you putting him in left?
I'm putting him in left, yeah.
Castillo's in center.
Castillo or Bradley or whomever, Mookie Betts.
Because there's the name right there.
Yeah, you know.
just hit it right there.
Well, let me tell you.
I thought it was a Mookie world.
The thing is Victorino is not going to be able to be traded because he's coming off injury.
Right.
And he's not going to play a backup role. And he
Okay.
probably won't play center. Yeah, you're more likely to see Mookie Betts in center. My scenario is this. Cespedes in left, Mookie in center, Victorino in right. Castillo starts the season in AAA. That's what I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think
Okay.
Castillo doesn't have this. Remember, before he came, the Sox signed him at the end of the year last year. He played in AA and then AAA through the playoffs. He hadn't swung a bat in 2 years.
That's true.
So he's playing winter ball this year and all that, and maybe he'll get back in. But I just have the sense that maybe I'll be wrong and maybe he'll tear it up. But you have the option with him to put him in the minors.
I wasn't even thinking about that.
At least for a period of time.
I really wasn't.
And then I could see a scenario where Victorino is doing well. You can trade him, move Betts to right, bring Castillo up for center, partway through the season.
That is a possibility there. I mean, we also have names like Brock Holt and Nava, who had outfield time as well.
Yep,
now, I don't think we count on them as much.
No.
Because I think they'll be. We also didn't even put Alan Craig in the mix.
Alan Craig,
who was deplorable when he came over.
That's being kind.
But here's your ifs. Here's your ifs list, like you were talking about before. There's so many question marks with so little space that they can maneuver and do things with.
Right.
There's got to be a trade somewhere.
There's got to be a trade somewhere. There are too many outfielders.
Is trying
To me, the most tradable commodity is Nava.
Yeah.
Nava had the great season in 2013. He kind of stunk it up at the beginning of 14. They sent him to the minors to straighten it out. If you look at his numbers when he came back from the minors,
he was a 330 hitter.
He was a very solid guy. I think he's your most tradable outfielder and commodity. He's the guy that could potentially bring you a pitcher. I don't know if anyone's going to take Alan Craig, but I think he's the guy. Betts would be tradable also. I just don't think the Red Sox want to trade Betts.
No.
I think the guy who the Red Sox would most want to trade, who has the most value in the trade market, is Nava.
Holiday season is coming up, and I love to do a Christmas list. I love to tell Santa what I want for Christmas every year.
What do you want for Christmas this year?
Well, I think there's a couple things that you can want. Obviously, you want your starting pitchers.
This is Ben Cherington's Christmas list.
You want your third baseman and things like that. But I think it all starts with making sure that you have a quality, ready-to-go catcher. We didn't even think about that behind the plate. Now, no knock on the catcher who was with the Red Sox.
Whose name suddenly escapes me. Who I like a lot, by the way.
Yes, I did. And his name is drawing a blank on me, and I'll think of it in a minute. But I think that he needs a little bit more seasoning.
Okay. Now, I think he handled the pitching staff very well.
Yep.
And I think that his defense was outstanding. He's not the hitter, but
Christian Vasquez.
There it is. I like Vasquez, and I would just pencil him in.
Pencil him in?
Pencil him in as your catcher.
Okay.
If he were poor defensively and if the pitchers didn't respond to him, I'd say let's season him a little more.
Yep.
The hitting, I think, if he's got the talent, it will come. And again, I'm not as worried about that from the catcher position. Handling the pitch, we saw that with Veritek for years and years and years. He just, a sub 230 hitter every year almost, except for 1 or 2 when he was younger. But because he was so valuable as a handler of the pitching staff that he made up for his offensive deficiencies in other ways that way. I think Vasquez is that kind of guy with a better arm.
And I hope that turns into something like that, because last year was a disaster with A.J. Przinsky behind the plate there.
Yes, it was.
I think that's what threw that team off at the start of the season, because people did not like him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a big mistake bringing him in. I think they made a huge mistake letting Saltalamacchia go and bringing Przinsky in. And Saltalamacchia didn't have a particularly great season down in Miami or wherever he went. But I still think he was a good guy, a steadying force. People liked him.
Yep.
And they didn't pay him a whole lot. I mean, Miami. He went to Miami, so I mean, they didn't pay him a whole lot. The Red Sox
didn't want him.
The Red Sox easily could have, if they gave Saltalamacchia what they gave Przinsky, I think Saltalamacchia would have taken it.
But you saw it in the World Series with Saltalamacchia. I mean, he could not handle the pressure.
Yeah, you mean Przinsky?
No, I'm talking about Salty.
Okay.
I can remember game 2.
Oh, you mean last year?
When he threw that ball down the left field line, and he sat his butt on the bench the rest of the series.
Yeah.
He looked like a little leaguer out there as a catcher. And that right there, to me, was the single-handed reason he wasn't back. It's because the pitchers did not feel comfortable with him being behind the plate.
Yeah.
They wanted to pitch to Ross.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Vasquez turns into a better David Ross type, that he's the backbone and making sure that these pitchers will get the job done.
I think he's got the potential to do that.
I'm hoping he does.
So I'm hoping that.
Hey, he had grit. He was in there. He was aggressive. He looked like he wanted to get better and cared.
Yep.
So hopefully that is there too. The next thing I want on my Christmas list is definitely the pitcher.
Yeah.
And I think it's coming from a trade, and I would strongly feel that it's coming from either one or two teams. One team is the Cincinnati Reds, who have a good combination of some pitchers over there. They got Johnny Cueto, Mike Leake, Matt Latos, and another couple of names over there.
Matt Latos would be great.
And I think Latos would be a fantastic addition to the staff. Or the other addition that I think it could come from for a team is the Mets. The Mets have a
Okay.
handful of pitchers coming back.
Yeah, and the Mets aren't going anywhere.
And they're not really going anywhere. They have Matt Harvey, who's very high on their list, coming back from his surgery. Names that you might hear are John Nish, and another couple that are floating out there, Bartolo Colon. I don't think I'd touch him, but the Mets have a surplus of pitching. And don't count out the Island of Misfit Toys Athletics, because they have Jeff Samardzija, who I think the Red Sox would try and deal in a heartbeat. We already know the relationship between the A's and the Red Sox.
I'm not convinced the A's would trade Samardzija. I think he's on his rookie contract still, and I don't think that the A's don't get rid of guys like that.
But here's the thing about that
They're
with
not
the
going to be
A's.
able to re-sign
They
him,
will
though.
not be able to re-sign him.
And
So they may want the youth.
Do you think the A's would take a Nava or a Betts for Samardzija?
I think they'd take Betts in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
and I think they'd take Betts and maybe like
Betts
a
and someone
Ruby
else,
De La
yeah.
Rosa
Yeah.
and
Another pitcher,
Anthony
yeah.
Ronaldo, Henry Owens, something
Yeah.
like that. I would do it.
That would be very
It is
interesting.
very hard to find quality, major league ready pitchers that are getting the job done.
Yeah, that
I
would-
would rather trade a prospect to get an established arm. Because it's
I
very
agree with
hard
that.
to do that,
Yeah.
especially in the American League. In the East, forget it.
Yeah. I would absolutely make that deal if you know Betts and, like you said, one of the pitching prospects,
Yep.
De La Rosa or whoever, for Samardzija, I would absolutely do that. So if I'm so willing to do that, you got to think that Oakland's going to want more. Maybe
Well,
another prospect added into. I don't know. You know.
Here's the thing with Oakland. They have a lot of things going on, including trying to get a new ballpark and everything.
Right.
So they may be
Which they
trying to
desperately
do.
need, by the way.
Oh, it's
just
a
as
dump.
point inside, whatever. Oakland, worst ballpark in the major leagues, hands down.
Hands down.
Well, no, I take that back.
Tampa is
the worst.
Tampa's the worst. Oakland has sewage coming out of their outfield grass.
Oakland is like a canyon too, because it's built for the football. And they have
Yeah.
that giant thing out in the center.
The Raiders need to stay there.
They cover like 3/4 of the seats with
ridiculous.
tarps because they know they can't put anybody in them. The thing
ridiculous.
seats 90,000 people or whatever, and anyway, it's awful.
But I hope. I'm thinking the A's would want to maybe rebuild and retool again and figure out what they're really going to do. Because the only way I see them going to win a championship or anything is going to be with youth.
Yeah.
They struck out and failed too many times. They're trying to bring in big type players. I don't think they're going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So other than that,
So
for
that's
Red
Nick's
Sox,
Red
do
Sox
we have
Christmas
do we have
list.
anything else? Do you have anything on your list?
My Christmas. I want 2 pitchers.
You want 2 pitchers?
I want 2 pitchers.
Okay.
I'll live with the position players. I want 2 pitchers.
Would Max Scherzer and James Shields make your Christmas happy or no?
Shields, I don't like.
Yep, me neither.
Scherzer, if we could do Lester and Scherzer,
Oh, yes.
I would be. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
That's not going to happen. Oh, yes. That would not be
I mean, let's be
happening.
honest. It's never going to happen. But I mean, obviously, I'd be a very happy guy if it did.
Yeah.
Another name that was floated out there was Masterson.
Okay.
Of course, we've been there, done that with Masterson.
Yep.
We traded him initially.
He
but,
may need Farrell to come under his
but I tell
microscope.
you, Lester Masterson. Mm-hmm. I could live with that.
Yeah, I could live with that.
Or a Hamels Masterson or a Scherzer Masterson.
Mm-hmm.
Then with Buchholz and Kelly and whoever your number 5 is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's a solid pitching staff.
There's a solid pitching staff.
So I mean, I think there's some possibility there, and that's why I'm saying about on number 2. You don't need to go out and get 2 number 1s.
Right.
Masterson would fit in very nicely as a number 2 in a staff that had a Lester or a Scherzer or a Hamels or someone like that to kind of take the heat as the number 1.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the hot stove. You never know if the fire's going to
stove.
go out or if it's just going to keep on burning.
Yep,
So
yep.
stay with us this rest of the winter. Next episode that you might see, we may be seeing Lester back.
We
and
may
you
have
never
number
know.
31 jerseys on.
We can't predict the future. We just can't. Now, we're going to stay in the Major League ballpark just for a second because we need to discuss one particular signing that happened this week.
Okay.
That I think a couple of us
I want to hear what you have to say about this.
wanted to deposit something not so nice into something.
As Bill Parcells said, it caused me to throw up in my mouth.
Basically. I was telling kids that I want to be best friends with that guy.
Absolutely.
I mean, who wouldn't?
Who wouldn't? We thought
That-
Alex Rodriguez was overpaid.
Well, sorry, he's cheap compared to this.
Yes, he is.
Giancarlo Stanton was signed by the Miami Marlins for a 13-year, I'm trying to say this slow so you can digest it, $325 million. I'm
Yes,
going to
boys
repeat
and girls, that's $325 million guaranteed
for 13 years.
dollars for 13 years.
I am flabbergasted by that amount of money, and I honestly cannot believe a team would be this foolish to give somebody this amount of money.
First of all,
I think it's foolish.
First of all, the length of the contract, 13 years. You know, how can you possibly predict that a guy is going to be effective for 13 years? You know, it's one thing if you sign him for, like the Red Sox have done this several times with their young stars. You sign him for 7 or 8 years at low money. Mm-hmm. They did it with Nomar. They did it with Pedroia. You know, with guys they knew were going to be superstars after they'd played a couple years.
Right.
You know, and then we wanted to lock them up. I mean, the Cleveland Indians in the 90s did this brilliantly. They locked up all those guys to longer deals at low money. But at the time, it was better than what those guys were getting. So you understand why teams would do it. But 13, first of all, it's just a weird number anyway. And second of all, how can you possibly predict what a guy's going to be doing in 2027?
I think it's the most absurd.
Because that's the year we're talking about, 2027.
I'll be 37 or something like that. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. What was I going to say on this? I think it's the most absurd contract ever given out in sports. I
have a hard time arguing with that. And then you go, you know, what is 325 divided by 13? I mean, 10 is 32, so 13, you know, it's like you're talking $30 million a year. 30 million.
You know what's disgusting about it is that A-Rod's. This is hard for me to say it.
A-Rod's deal looks reasonable.
Was the worst contract in all of sports.
It still is the worst.
It still is. But this one right here. He was just nailed almost in the eye socket by a baseball. We haven't seen him play since he went down on his knees and got hurt.
Yep. You know, even if he hits 320 and 40 home runs every year for 13 years, I still don't think he's worth it.
And, you know, if you think about the contracts that have been given out over the past 10 years or so to these players, have they been worth it? Have these players earned every dollar?
Almost none of them have.
Almost none of them.
Pujols was a big one a few years ago.
Yep.
And he hasn't lived up to it.
Josh Hamilton.
Josh Hamilton hasn't lived up to it.
Dustin Pedroia right now.
Dustin Pedroia hasn't lived up to it yet, though it's a different scale. Prince Fielder has not lived up to it yet.
You're going to be very surprised with this answer.
All right.
And who knows if he was cheating with it or not. Manny Ramirez.
Yeah, Manny Ramirez was a good signing for the Red Sox. You know, putting the cheating.
It took a lot of thought to come up with that one.
Putting the cheating aside, you know, that was a long time ago. But you know, considering that with Manny being there, they won 2 World Series. It's hard to argue with that contract, and he produced until the very end, until the last couple months,
right,
when he was dogging it. You know, he did produce very well for the Red Sox.
Year in and year out with the Red Sox.
And you can't complain about that.
You really can't. You really can't.
You know, whether or not he was on the roids the whole time or not, I don't know. That's you know, between him and God. But
let's not go down that avenue with Manny now.
But you know what I mean. But the fact of the matter is he was worth it.
We really talked baseball
at
the beginning here. We really did, and we didn't even get a chance to talk about the Patriots, on which we wanted to spend some time with. So, would you like to still talk about the Patriots?
The only thing I'd say about the Patriots is what is there to say?
That's true.
I mean, you know, when I was on the show last time, I pointed to this 5-game stretch.
Yep.
Broncos, Colts, Lions, Packers, Chargers.
Right.
And the only reason I included the Chargers in that is because it's away in San Diego, and they're a good team. You know, I said they had to win 3 of those 5 for me to really feel good about this team. And I picked off the Lions as a win, the Chargers as a win, and the Colts as a win.
Okay.
Well, lo and behold, they also beat the Broncos.
Right.
You know, and so now I'm looking at a 4-1 streak. I still think they lose to Green Bay in Green Bay. I have, as good as the Patriots have been.
That's the one game I'm looking at on the schedule.
Look at and I say that is the toughest game on their schedule.
Yep.
You know, because it's in Green Bay. If it were in New England,
be a different story.
I think it'd be a different story, but I think in Green Bay, I despite the fact that all the numbers point to New England being the hardest place to play in the NFL, I disagree. I believe Green Bay is the hardest place to play in the NFL. I really do.
I think Seattle's the hardest place to play in the NFL.
Seattle, well, I don't know.
Of the noise.
They've looked a little.
They've looked off this year, but it was before. I would have been most nervous about that.
That's last year. That's last year.
That's
I'm talking
true.
this year.
Yep.
This year, I think Green Bay scores 48 points a game in their own stadium.
Yep.
nobody can compete with that, you know, and it's the frozen tundra and that whole thing, and that shouldn't bother New England that much, you know, the cold weather piece, because they're used to that. Especially, fortunately, they're getting to practice in it this week. But that's the game. I think they'll beat the Lions this week, and I think they have an excellent shot at beating the Chargers in 2 weeks. It's the Green Bay game. I think they probably lose. But the fact that the Broncos lost last week to the Rams,
that opened some eyes big time.
well, not only that, it really puts the Patriots in the driver's seat for the conference.
Right.
And that's really what I look at is you know, I want the first round bye, and I want the championship game. I want the number 1 seed. And the Patriots are absolutely in the driver's seat for the number 1 seed. They barely got 2 games in hand against the Broncos because they beat the Broncos. So I feel pretty good about that.
What I'm just most amazed about with this team is we do a little rundown, a little script each time we do these shows.
Right.
And I look back in September and I saw some of the notes that we looked at, and you know, even as recently as our last show that we did, which was back in October, and to look at what we had on the script and say, wait a minute, who's this again?
Yeah, right.
Who's this again? We were actually debating on whether Tom Brady was done as a quarterback.
I think everybody was.
I feel like an idiot. I mean, to look at what he's been able to do now and see where this team has gone.
This Patriots team, to me, is a classic Belichick team.
Okay.
And that is, they do what they have to do to win. And 1 week, it's Tom Brady passing for 320 yards and 4 touchdowns. And another week, it's a nobody running for 201 yards on 38 carries.
Yep.
They do what they need to do. And in 1 week, it's a shutdown quarter on Demaryius Thomas or whatever. And the next week, they're swapping it, you know, with Darrelle Revis playing Reggie Wayne and not T.Y. Hilton.
Right.
Which was like, I really think that threw the Colts off. They expected Revis on T.Y. Hilton, and so they expected that they were going to get 4 or 5 or 6 deep plays over the course of a game in that matchup. And when they didn't do that, when they double-teamed Hilton instead of double-teaming Wayne, and they just totally threw him up. But this is exactly what good Belichick teams do, is they don't do what you expect them to do.
Well, I also think we're seeing here, I had the defense written down as one of my X factors in this team here, and we're really seeing why Revis is such a shutdown corner.
Yep.
I mean, he's been phenomenal.
Yep.
He's been worth every cent of the dollar
And they
that
should
has
bring
been
him
given to
back
him.
next year.
They absolutely. If they don't, they're stupid.
They need to open up.
They have to.
Talk about opening up the vaults. They need to find the vaults below Gillette Stadium and let Bob Kraft spend a little money.
Go get the parking money that you do. Go get your cinema money and pennies and nickels and dimes.
Take the money they make off the Revolution.
Yeah. All the Davio's dinners over there at Gillette Stadium.
The rent on the Olive Garden.
Yeah, there you go. Also, Brandon Browner and the rest of the units. I think Devin McCourty's having his best season as a Patriot this year.
Devin McCourty's
He's grown into his role a little bit more effectively now. The whole team, as a whole, has transitioned from terrible. That's kind of a hard word to say, terrible.
Mediocre.
Mediocre, when they were with Kansas City and all that, to outstanding football.
I mean, in
a very short amount of time.
When we went on after the Kansas City game, I said that it was the only time in the Belichick era that I remember the Patriots not looking like they were prepared for a game.
Right.
That's what I said 2 or 3 shows ago.
Right.
After this Colts game, I don't believe I can recall a game where I thought the Patriots were this good against a quality opponent. They've beaten up on lesser opponents and looked really good. This was considered, the Colts are considered a Super Bowl contender before this game. After this game, they're saying no. That's the difference. And so they were considered the best.
Yep.
You know, the Broncos, Colts, I mean, they're all right there. And the Patriots have beat both of those teams up. Just beat them up.
Well, here's my question. How did it happen? I
think 2 things. I think defensively, I think Browner has made a huge difference after his suspension, coming back and being a physical presence in the secondary. He gets a few penalties here and there, but I think they're worth it in the long run.
Okay.
I think that we'll see what happens when Chandler Jones comes back, but I really think Jamie Collins has really stepped up his game there. And I think
that's a big name that you mentioned there.
I think the defensive line has stepped it up also, just as a physical presence. I mean, they dominated the Colts offensive line last week, and they dominated the Broncos the week before. On the offensive side, there's only one name you need to know: Gronk. You know, and it's fascinating because people look at the stats, and we've become so fascinated with stats because of fantasy football. And
of course we have.
And Gronk is on my team, on my fantasy team, and his stat line was a good one for a tight end, but wasn't great. But if you look at that game, the way he blocked and the way he pushed people around, the way he set up the running game, the way he said, I don't care if I catch a pass as long as I can block and just be Gronk and push people around, he was the difference maker on the offense on Sunday.
Gronk stoppable?
Gronk stoppable. I really, and that's the piece that doesn't end up on a stat sheet.
No.
Fantasy owners don't get any points for great blocks.
Nope, they
but
don't.
that 130-yard run.
They should, but they don't.
No, they should. That 130-yard run where Gronk is 25 yards down the field making a block. If you look at that play, he made it's one of the best plays I've ever seen a tight end made. His assignment was another guy. But he saw that Jonas Gray was already past him. That guy wasn't going to make a difference, and he bounced out and blocked the other guy and gave Jonas Gray an extra 12 yards on that run.
So you would say Gronk is one of the players that Gray should thank?
Oh, absolutely. I think, except the fact that Gronk is an established guy with lots of money, and Gray is a rookie with no money. He ought to be buying him a good Christmas present.
He better. I mean, because let's just put it that way. Jonas Gray was an amazing performance from somebody who basically off the trash, literally, and came in and got the job done. So that was pretty amazing there. But here's another name that we also need to mention as the 6th offensive lineman of the game. Fleming
had a great game.
He came in and did exactly what he was supposed to do. Add that extra lineman for coverage. And when that coverage was there, it enabled Gray to find a hole or a route to be able to run through. Or it enabled Gronk to be able to set back and get ready for a throw to catch for a touchdown. Lo and behold, he does that at the end of the game and shoves Mr. Sergio Brown right into the NBC cameras. And as Chris Collinsworth said, he just took him out of the nightclub. I love that line.
Pushed him right out of the nightclub.
Pushed him right out of the nightclub, just like a bouncer. So overall, I think that we saw probably the most dominating performance from the Patriots of the season.
Certainly of this season, I think of in a couple of years.
Because as a whole, everything was clicking.
Because of the quality of the opponent. I would say this is probably the best Patriots win in a couple of years, easily.
Absolutely.
And we'll see what happens. I mean, the win against Denver last year was a quality win, but you remember how they got beat up in the first half and came back in the second half. This one, though it was close after the first half.
The coach just didn't stand a chance.
You could tell the Patriots.
Totally.
And again, Collinsworth, I don't give him enough credit normally for having some good insights, but he said something during the broadcast which I thought was so true. He says he's seen it 100 times with a superstar player when they make a mistake. They come back mad and they tear you apart in the second half. And that's exactly what Brady did. Brady had that interception at the end of the half, which was completely his fault. It was a horrible play.
It was
a horrible play. But he came back in the second half and just tore him up.
He did.
And that's what superstars do. That's what Larry Bird used to do. It's what Magic Johnson used to do in basketball. They make a mistake.
Different category players.
Yeah, they make a mistake.
Different levels.
And Manning does it. Manning, when he makes Peyton Manning, when he makes a mistake, he comes back angry, and he plays so much better.
Oh, he doesn't throw 6 interceptions?
Well, no, that's the other one.
Oh, that's right.
By the way,
I just had to have one shot at Eli.
I'd like to point out that the Manning brothers combined for like 9 interceptions on Sunday.
They did. That was pretty cool.
That was pretty spectacular.
Since we're at that topic, the rest of the NFL. I think that we know that the Patriots, they have the game against the Lions coming up. That's this Sunday. That should be an exciting, I think it's a great match. I think it's a good match.
I think the Patriots win, somewhere 30-21, 30-22, something like that.
I like the 35 number for some reason. I'm loving that number. Yeah. But the defense for the Lions is much better than the Colts.
They're not going to be able to run over the Lions the way they did over the Colts. I think we know that. And it wouldn't surprise me if Jonas Gray has 12 carries for 45 yards this week. I mean,
I wouldn't either.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Or Vereen gets all the carries.
Or Vereen gets all the carries.
You can't have a fantasy running back with the Patriots because if you play one, they're not going to get it.
Yeah, that's what the Patriots do.
And they're going to sit on their bench and they're going to get the points.
It's what the Patriots do. They play the guys that are going to
Good luck to you if you do play one.
Why did they keep running the ball on Sundays? Because the Colts couldn't stop them.
Find an answer. And they couldn't find the answer.
They couldn't find an answer.
Look at the Colts when they were trying to run the ball. What did they have, 20 yards on the night?
They had 17 yards.
Oh, that was even more.
And 12 of them were scrambles by Andrew Luck, the quarterback. And one of those scrambles was 8 yards. Almost half of their rushing yards came on one scramble.
Great night by the running back.
Great night by the running back. Well, Bradshaw went down, and Trent Richardson is nothing.
He's nothing.
He should be better than he is, but he's horrible.
Now, surprises in the NFL. Okay, we definitely have to hit on the Arizona Cardinals.
You think they're a surprise?
I am surprised with that.
They went 10-6 last year.
I'm surprised by at least number one with Carson Palmer going down.
Well,
that Drew Stanton has been able to come in
Their third
and do
quarterback of the season.
pretty decent.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, he had a good game. He had a good game. Nothing wrong with that.
the defense has definitely been the Cardinals' bread and butter. There's no question about it. Their running game with Andre Ellington has definitely developed. Larry Fitzgerald is supposed to be their number one guy, but he's really not.
Most defenses double team him, and so they go to what's his name on the other side, who's kind of coming out of his shell this season. But Larry Fitzgerald has changed.
Yeah, big time.
Larry Fitzgerald has lost a step.
Yep.
And I think he used to be that stretch the field kind of guy, and now he's more of a slot receiver kind of guy. And they don't go to him as much. I mean, he had a big game 2 weeks ago, but he didn't do much at all this past week.
You put the Patriots against the Cardinals, what happens?
Oh, I think the Patriots win.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
The Patriots win. I think at this point in time, just based on what we've seen on the field, I can't imagine Bill Belichick not being able to completely befuddle Drew Stanton.
No.
I mean, and that's the difference maker for me between these two teams is you got Drew Stanton, you got Tom Brady. Who are you going to take? Of course you're going to take Tom Brady.
Right.
And that's the difference maker there. So I think, I would put the Patriots over the Cardinals at this point in time.
And my other surprise team definitely has to be the Broncos. I mean, they've had injuries and things like that. I thought they were better than what they were. Especially after this last game on Sunday.
Losing to the Patriots.
This is an embarrassment.
Losing
on Sunday.
to the Patriots, you go, okay. The Patriots are on a
that's
roll.
okay. Yeah.
It's in Gillette Stadium.
Two good teams facing off against two good teams.
Someone has to win, someone has to lose. Losing to the St. Louis Rams, I don't care where they play.
That's embarrassing.
That's embarrassing.
Yep.
I don't know what was going on. I mean, Manning had nothing. He had one touchdown pass, so he had 300-something yards. But
was it a Manning's fault? I don't even know. Was he? I didn't get a chance to watch the game.
I didn't
but
see
just
the
from
game
looking
either. I just saw the stats. He had over 300 yards, but only one touchdown pass. But he had 2 interceptions, and I think the interceptions. And one of them was a pick six.
And that was the kill.
And that was the killer. So if I look at the positive, I don't see Arizona as much as a surprise because they did do well last year. I'm kind of pumped about the Cleveland Browns. I know they lost this week, but they've been a bit of a surprise. You always, in this era, you expect the Cleveland Browns, they're always bad. But they've got a shot of taking the AFC North.
But what we ended up seeing on that, Mallet is really better than Hoyer.
Mallet is better than Hoyer, yeah. That's true.
I would like to see the Browns win.
I think that they have a shot. I mean, the Ravens are going nowhere. Pittsburgh is very flaky.
Yep.
And the Texans are looking better, but there's I'm not going to put a lot.
Needs more development.
Yeah, they need more development. I think the Browns have a chance of taking the North
this
year.
I do.
And that's just, to me is surprising. In a division with the Ravens and the Steelers, that's not the team I would have picked.
No, not at all. The only other surprise that I have to say is what an embarrassment it is for the NFC East to have New Orleans Saints 4-6. You have Atlanta 4-6. You have
that's the NFC South.
NFC South, excuse me.
Yeah.
You have
there's no winning teams in the NFC South.
Is it the Titans that are in that?
No, they're in the AFC. It's the Panthers.
The Panthers, thank you. That was the other one.
And Tampa.
One of those teams could actually be a playoff team.
They're going to have a sub-500 team in the playoffs this year.
And Drew Brees' post-game conference from Sunday, that was deplorable.
At the very best, the Saints will be 500. And so I think you'll either have the Saints at 500 or you'll have a sub-500 team in the playoffs this year.
I lost a lot of respect for him with his conference, with him saying, we did lose, but we have a lot of things to be happy about with what we're doing
This
here.
was the part of the season for the Saints that they had like 3 home games in a row, and they've lost 2 of them now. And this was where they were supposed to get it all together and make their charge, and they've looked terrible. They have looked terrible. And Drew Brees is a good quarterback, but I agree. His statements. Can you imagine Tom Brady standing up there?
People would be bull.
And saying,
just bull.
After the Kansas City game.
Yeah.
Oh well, we had a few things that went well.
Yeah.
He would never do that.
Never.
He would tell it like it is. We stunk. We were terrible. We were awful. We need to get better.
And that's what puts certain players up higher and some pedestals than others.
And I agree. I lost a little respect for Drew Brees this weekend.
I was shocked at that statement, but that's the NFC South for you. So again, maybe we shouldn't be surprised.
They're a horrible division.
We're going to finish up the last couple minutes here with the show. It's with Face Off. And again, just a reminder for those at home, if the guest thinks the statement is legit. They say it's fact. And if the guest thinks the statement is only of the opinion of the host, they will say opinion.
Right.
So the question is figuring out really what I have to say
Right.
for
Right.
that question. So statement, excuse me. Statement number 1 reads, Rob Gronkowski will stay healthy the rest of the season.
I say fact.
Okay.
I think he's got a lot of motivation to be healthy. I think he's got a lot to prove. And, the arm breaking on the field goal or the extra point was a fluke injury.
Sure.
I think he's got a lot to prove. So I say fact.
I agree with that. I do think that's a fact. I think that Gronk is a little bit more understanding of what his body can and cannot do anymore. I think that he has a little bit more of a safety net on what he wants to do. Mm-hmm. And I think he's thinking up here once in his life about what he should be doing a little bit. So I think that that's a fact, and I think he helps lead the Patriots to a long ride in the playoffs and hopefully Super Bowl.
Yep, hopefully.
Statement number 2 reads, Tuukka Rask will fail to live up to his large contract with the Boston Bruins that was just recently signed.
I say opinion. I think he will live up to it.
You think he will?
I think he will pull it through, and I think he's still one of the top goalies in the league, top 5, 6 goalies in the league, and I think he will.
Okay, I also agree that that's an opinion. I feel that Tuukka Rask will live up to his contract. I think he went through a little bit of a rough stretch here recently because the defense hasn't been there.
Yeah.
So I think that Rask is legit. I think he will be.
Yeah,
fantastic.
When the opponents,
he's a Vezina Trophy goalie. He's fine.
When the opponents are making 40, 45 shots on net.
Yeah, I like the third statement here because it really makes you think about really this player was with the Patriots for 3 Super Bowls and everything like that. And he's going to be retiring soon. He's 42 years old.
Oh, he hit a 53-yard field goal the other night.
Yeah, maybe he's not. Maybe he'll just be out in his walker when he's 70 and still kicking. Right. Oh, we got a field goal here or something like that. But that's Adam Vinatieri.
Adam Vinatieri.
He will be retiring soon, and he will be a Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. The question will be, Adam Vinatieri will retire and go into the Hall of Fame with a Patriots jersey on.
Fact. No doubt about it. If he makes the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
That's the part I have a question about.
Really?
Just because he's a kicker.
All right.
And there's like one kicker in the Hall of Fame. They don't like to put it. If there is a kicker to go in, though, it's going to be Vinatieri.
Okay.
And if he goes in, he's in a Patriot jersey because of the Super Bowls.
Because of the Super Bowls.
Yeah.
What if the Colts win another one?
The Colts aren't going to win another one with Vinatieri there.
Okay. All right.
I mean, he had one with the Colts. He had one, but he had 3 with the Patriots. That's what people remember him for. People remember the Snow Bowl kick. The people remember the big kicks at the end of the Super Bowls to win. The 2 big ones against the Panthers and against the Rams.
Right.
Those are the kicks that people remember, and I think he goes in with the Patriots jersey.
What a show.
Wow.
We did a lot. We did a whole lot for you. So we hope you enjoyed it here at home. Kevin, thank you for giving everybody your expertise on baseball, football, basketball, hockey, and anything else.
Thanks for having me on.
So thank
we
you.
didn't even talk about basketball.
No, we really didn't talk about basketball at all.
Next time.
Except for LeBron James' name did.
I did mention LeBron James.
We did mention something.
So a little bit of basketball.
We hope you have a great holiday. We hope to see you before the holidays are really kicking off again. If we don't, we hope you have a safe holiday, Happy New Year, and we will see you very soon. For Nick Face, we'll see you soon.